is African American History Month as well as Women's History Month. And again, we're talking to Dr. Gloria Pillow. Dr. Pillow joined us during the second segment. And Dr. Pillow, as we started in that second segment, let's sort of pick up where we left off. I think you were giving us some information relative to what we might consider to be strong, individual black females in a real sense. And so let's talk about it from that perspective.
Women, and specifically Dr. Haney, mothers, and that was very deliberate. My own mother has been such an inspiring, such an awe-inspiring figure in my own life. I remember one time she and my dad were at the dinner table with us, and I asked her, how could you and Daddy even fall in love? You couldn't do so many things. You couldn't go to a movie. You couldn't walk in a park. You couldn't go to the swimming pool. How did you even manage to live a normal life, have a normal family, inspire us the way you did? So I'd have to say that my mother's example helped bring me to this study. And again, I began with chapter 6, which is Beloved by Toni Morrison. Sethi, I think arguably the most well-known mother in all of African American literature, certainly. The first chapter is an autobiography by Harriet Jacobs, and the thing that she lays out for us, in fact, there's a quote I'd like to read if you don't mind, is that slavery, as bad as it is for men, is actually worse for women. I'm bad at paraphrasing, so I'm going to read. Slavery is terrible for men, but, and this is emphasis, it is far more terrible for women. Superadded to the burden common to all, they have wrongs and sufferings and mortifications peculiarly their own. It's interesting that she used the term peculiar, since slavery is widely known as the peculiar institution. Very good. At age 14, she says, the war of my life begins. The sexual assault is what she's speaking of, and this is what the female slave, above all the other indignities, has to fear and has to suffer. This woman never wanted to be a mother. She was forced into being a mother. Once she had her children, she actually wished them dead, in a sort of foreshadowing of Toni Morrison's novel, wherein the mother actually kills them. She doesn't, of course, want her children not to live. She doesn't want them to live under the conditions of slavery. She undergoes an incredible period in her life after her grandmother abandons her upon finding out about her first pregnancy, which, of course, she had no control over. And her grandmother had been her shining light, her source of nurture, because her mother was dead, her father was dead, and when her grandmother turned her out for being pregnant, she was lost for a while. My students would often say, I just don't believe this story. No grown woman with 2 children would spend 7 years in an attic living like a baby, unable to speak, having her grandmother nurture her.
And that was her condition, huh?
That was her condition. Again, I look towards psychoanalytic theory. Again, no friend of black people in its history. But the insights, again, in terms of the psyche, are so important. What I helped explain to them was this young woman's grandmother, her maternal figure, could not accept the reality of her own slavery. Therefore, she told her, slavery is God's will. So we simply must live under the will
of God.
When her son escaped to the north, she grieved as though he had died. There wasn't enough progression in her mind to be happy for him. At one point, the money that she was saving, conversely, for her children's freedom, $300, was an amount that she loaned to her mistress, so that the mistress could buy a pair of candelabra. The students, again, this cannot be true. And I've used this analogy before. We would study slave narratives, and the slave was sent by the master. The slave was sent by the master to go across town to pick up a suit from the cleaners, and the students incredulously would ask, well, why didn't he just run away then? And I would answer them, if you can't imagine a thing, then you can't do it.
Good.
If you can't imagine freedom, like the bird in the cage once the door is open, like the elephant whose tether is no longer there. If you cannot imagine what it means to be free, then you can't.
You're still enslaved.
You're still enslaved. So
psychologically, that's
exactly. And this is what happened with this woman when she found a way to hide herself in the attic. She did so, and then all of her faculties sort of left her. She could no longer speak. She couldn't dress herself. She couldn't feed herself. Her grandmother, who had re-welcomed her into her bosom, took care of her like she was a baby. And that's the point I would help my students get to. She psychologically regressed to almost a prenatal state, certainly pre-adolescent state, before she was sexually in danger of abuse by the slave master or any other white man in the district who might take a yearning to her. Still, what I say in the chapter is she was not a wonderful mother as we know.
But she was a model for those women who wanted to protest the